How quick was up this one?
Yeah, I took 5. So just 5 minutes.
All right.
You are live.
Good morning, everybody. Sorry for the delay, but we only have about 10 listings, so when everything crashed, it was good timing. All right. All right, so we're going to start with 6300 Seawall Boulevard for $115,900, unit 3228 in the Victorian, Don Parker. Thanks. 1602 Elgin Street, Unit 5, $150,000.
So this is a relist, and it's a really cute little unit. It has flooded before, but I'm hoping Laurie King's going to bring me an offer on it today. But anyway, it's very, very cute little unit.
Cute. I remember seeing the
Been redone, yeah.
You got a contract on that?
No.
Huh?
No.
1114 Augusta Drive, Unit 22, $240,000, Diane Kiki.
Yeah. Yeah.
13212 Trail Hollow Drive for $289,000, Jennifer Lucio over in Georgetown. $4214 Dallas Street for $435,000, Jonathan Williamson over in
I'm
East
super
End.
excited about this one. Shout out to the relocation department. This is my first relocation. It was in my farm area, and I happened to get it. It's a great little listing. It's about 300 square feet. It's in Eastwood. It has a single car garage with a room above it that could be converted into a garage apartment, but it's not currently built out right now. That bathroom is great. It's like 14 by 10. You don't see a lot of nice sized bathrooms like that, these bungalows out in the Eastwood area. And if you're not familiar, Eastwood was developed by the same exact developer as Woodland Heights over in the Heights. It has that same feel with the live oaks down the street and all that. It's literally 2-3 minutes from downtown, close to the light rail and stadiums.
Is it protected?
What's that?
Is it protected where you can't change the front of the house?
There are setbacks. It's not historic. It's not designated historic district.
Okay.
But I will say that in that neighborhood, I mean, I'm not seeing anything happen like townhomes or anything like that.
Good,
so,
good.
Yeah.
Very cute.
Yeah, it's great. And it's on a great block too. The houses next to it have been renovated, and the houses across the street, there's maybe one sort of tear down looking house, but everything else looks nice.
Good.
Oh, cute. 5244 Larkin Street for $449,900, Stephen Worrell, Cottage Grove. Nice shiplap. $111 Paul Revere, $975, Robin Tucker.
Mr. Remus, the one that said he was never going below $1,050,000 or something like that.
Yeah, multitasking, she sent us a text, let's see what she said.
Yeah.
She's relisted it,
Right.
reduced price from 1/1.
Right.
Excellent building site at the end of the cul-de-sac, an opportunity to remodel. The lot is over a half acre, just under 25,000 square feet. It is zoned to Frostwood Memorial, Middle Memorial High. And I believe it's a 111 Paul Revere. It was an incredible ranch. I loved this home. Actually, no, it did have, I think it was a 1.5. And Paul Revere is one of those one street wonders.
Yep.
But it was a really great setting, but it did experience the flood. 533 College Street, $1,375,000, Headley Carpus. Bless you. Elevator.
Is Tucker still there?
2107 Persa, $1,395,000, Walter Baring.
Oh, that's pretty. That courtyard's really good.
Say it again.
I got bigger,
Persa,
got bigger since you.
Who's this?
Walter.
Yeah, is it name 325? Yeah, it is.
Ooh, look at that.
Wow.
That's really pretty. The courtyard's really good.
A little terrace. Catwalk.
That's right now. That's far.
It's right by him.
1937 Swift for $2,325,000, David Atkins.
This is a new construction. The architect on this is my bro, Masa Studio Architects. So it's going to lean very, very custom. Some of the transom details, if you see that dining room photo with the 3 chairs, that transom detail is iron insets.
Oh, wow.
The tray ceiling on the detail, the ceiling detail is routed through, and that's finished through also in the millwork
Pretty.
on the first floor. Your traditional, typical Sub-Zero Wolf package, 5-inch or 5-inch white oak floors, on-site cabinetry. The 7600 lot, it's a corner, so it was positioned 2 elevations. Has a built-in banquette there with the Eames table. That's the study with the turquoise teal chairs, and it has a little reading nook over on the front. Also, you can see that transom detail on there. Second floor, it's a contemporary farmhouse type of feel. Second floor has a huge master suite, big casement window, so you can put in window treatments integrated into it. Huge closets, all that good stuff. It's a 4-bedroom house, but the 4th bedroom was designed to be a flex room. You're about to get to it here. It's large enough, it has double doors. It could be a 4th bedroom, it could be a game room. Ideal for an empty nester that needs to check off the boxes for a 4-bedroom house, or really just wants 3 bedrooms with a big upstairs TV lounge.
David, what's the lot size? It looks huge.
It's right at 7,600.
Look how big it looks.
51 square footage. We had about 35 people come for the open
Whoa.
house.
Wow.
That's pretty good.
That's great.
Really?
Beautiful. That's awesome. Thank you.
Wow.
Yeah. It's
Well, I
really
mean, I have a little, I can bring you some 34 this
Oh, that's it.
What is that? Million dollars?
71%.
Okay, that's all we got for this week. Does anybody else have a new listing? Yes, sir, Tim.
We just signed 1907 McDuffie, which is a single family. It's actually got an extra yard. Most of the time, these are built on 2,500 square foot lots. This is 3,400. So you have like the side, which is really nice. You got a buffer. It was built in 2012. The owners have been there 2 years, being transferred to London. It is spotless. I mean, it is like they're not even there. And it's got a great, huge 25-foot or 23-foot long master closet, third floor game room. It could be
23 feet.
yeah, it's huge.
Gosh, that's a
3 or 4 bedroom, first floor living, and they just finished at the beginning of the year AJ's landscaping the yard and barbecue and all that. It's beautiful. So pictures will be up probably tomorrow and be online. So if y'all want to see it, just call us. That's $7.99.
Perfect. All righty. 2 quick announcements. If you have not met the new person in MLS, his name is Dinesh. Have y'all met him?
Yeah.
He's just the cutest thing in the world. He's working with Robert, and Robert's thrilled. He's doing great. You know, it is a lot to learn in that department because MLS has all these rules that you have to abide by. But if you're walking down there, stop and meet him. He's just the nicest guy in the world. His name is Dinesh. And he was so excited before the door contest started. I walked in there and they're open to accounting. And I looked in accounting, and accounting had all their masking tape on the floor. They had done all theirs out so they could see it on the floor so then they could move it up to the door. And I looked at Robert and I said, "Ooh, man, you've got a lot of competition here." And Dinesh said, "Don't you worry about it. We're going to win. We're going to win." He was real cute. So y'all can stop by and say hello to Dinesh. In Cyprus, Tammy Downey is doing so great in her business. She needed somebody to come in and help her, and she has invited her husband to come in and help her. And his name is Joey. So Joey Downey has joined the Cyprus office to help Tammy. I met Joey first when we were playing bowling for dollars for the, I think it was a trek, a bowl-a-thon put on by HAR. So we were bowling together. I actually was watching the bowling. They were bowling. So Joey Downey, welcome to Martha Turner Sotheby's. And now we have got Sita. Ready?
Carolyn Bobo.
Oh, Carolyn. Where's Carolyn? Forgot Carolyn. Go tell her. Carolyn Bobo. Carolyn Bobo. Carolyn Bobo. Bobo. Get in here.
I answer that every time. Good morning,
Come on over
everyone.
here. Come on over. Y'all come over here.
Hey, everybody, I'm Carolyn Bobo.
I'm Erin
Parker.
Right here.
Do you need a mic?
Yeah.
Okay, I think my voice is loud enough, but anyway, I'm Carolyn Bobo at Chicago Title, working with Erin. And I wanted to show a video, but before I do that, I'm gonna have everybody else introduce themselves. The video is a 1-minute video. If you're setting your 2019 goals, this is something to think about, is how to help your real estate business in 2019. It's a really cool app. You might really like it. If you get in there, it's fun to use. I'm gonna let you all look at it and decide for yourselves.
Okay. So here we go. Oh, wait, yeah, go ahead and share screen.
Just a minute. We
Well, we
are
gotta,
This one right
technically, we're.
well, we want to send this out to all the offices. present to
On
everyone.
YouTube.
So now it's
Oh,
presenting.
wow.
Yes, so that
This is on YouTube?
our agents can watch it. Yes, or wherever they are.
I want to get that volume up real quick. Thank you. That's good.
Does it have volume?
I hear it. Hang on. Sorry, they got a little mixer.
That's great.
Last night.
I like it as it's
Wow.
silent, so
Silent
wait till
reading.
there's volume. My ribs.
Call me for the
Because we
real.
definitely want to come on.
Yeah.
This is our problem.
Bless you.
Thank you very much.
That we can move on.
Thank you.
Well, in short, it can help you figure buyer's closing costs and seller's net proceeds. And if you're interested, just contact either Carolyn and I, and we can send you the link to it. It's very, very cool.
And you can also make an appointment with either one of us and we'll train you on it.
You don't go to App Store.
I'm sorry.
You
I'll get that
can,
audio.
but that way,
It's okay.
if there's any updates that we can let you know about if we send you the link. But yes, you can do it through the App Store as well.
I think the other thing with it is you have the ability to kind of customize and brand it with your own names and logos and things. So it's something it's it's a lot of marketing materials kind of at your fingertips. But I guess to segue into that, the volume. I guess to segue into that, the volume didn't quite work. It's kind of like that with I think this time of the year with the holidays, and you heard all year people talking about property taxes and wire fraud and all those things that we're not going to bore you with today. We just want to thank you for the support and the business that you sent us the last year. We look forward to working with you again next year. And I think the thing is that not everything always works out like that, like the volume didn't today. And sometimes in the holidays, it's easy to get overwhelmed and frustrated about things like that. Just remember that it's okay to take care of yourself. It seems like the time of the year, this is when all the crazy clients sometimes come out. And it's okay for you to set boundaries and take care of yourself. So I think that is just something that sometimes people in our industry don't do enough of. So, finish out the year strong. If you have any questions, there's anything we can do to help support you, let us know. And otherwise, we look forward to a successful 2019. So thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Happy holidays.
What is the name of the app?
Chicago Agent One. It's one word.
Yeah.
One.
Thank you. Okay, so we're presenting this right now, so we want to bring up.
Go back. Okay. Santa, can we just, can we include the link in the meeting notes?
Yes,
Thank you.
we will.
Who did that? Oh, you can look.
It's called Chicago.
Oh, okay. I just wanted to give a quick pricing update for 2019. So throughout the year, we work with all our publishers and everything like that. And then we sign annual contracts every year. And so we were 99% successful this year, keeping all your rates the same. As you know, we just presented last week, Culture Map, brand new relationships. So we're always looking for new and exciting avenues. Chris worked on that deal for like 6 months. We got them down significantly. You heard her say no one else in town is ever going to get those rates. So along those lines, we keep asking you every year, how do you guys like the Chronicle? Everyone says we need it. So we will continue to subsidize as much as possible. Unfortunately, that is the only one going up. Prices for everything else stays exactly the same. Chronicle, we have to take from $115 a listing ad to $145. It hasn't changed in 4 years. The Chronicle is the biggest game in town and they know it. I would say of all the brokers in town, we have the strongest negotiating power and we fight hard and we go back and forth a lot. Unfortunately, just like I said, the Chronicle kind of dug their heels in and this is where we're at. We're going to continue our relationship with them. I think we have a lot of very positive things digitally with them. Come September, we're going to ask you guys again, is Paper Chronicle still important to you? We will always ask you, we will always take our lead from you. We're going to continue to double down on what we've been working with the Chronicle. My Perfect Houston, we're expanding that. In a couple of months, we're going to be able to cover all of Houston. We're going to include that in the PMAs. So that's just another piece for you guys to go to take with you to your clients. I think that's going to be really successful with you and your buyers.
If we weren't in the Chronicle, would we still have that My Perfect House, or that's in the Chronicle?
So it gets complicated with these guys. They put everything together and all this stuff. If we got out of the Chronicle, yeah, we would still want to keep the digital part. We get huge exposure with them because they promote our stuff. You know how we do videos twice a month? They get over 100,000 views videos, plus they help us with these charity drives. So they have this monstrous distribution channel that, because of our relationship with them digitally and our contract, we have exclusive real estate rights with them. And that I think is really important. So Greenwood King, for example, they do This Forgotten Day, which is not real estate related at all. Martha Turner Sotheby's, yeah, we have an exclusive real estate content piece of our contract with them, and that is extremely valuable. So we are going to continue to work with them. We are going to continue to fight and negotiate for you guys.
What did you just say for that day? What was that?
I'm with the day, me.
No. So Greenwood King has another digital piece with them, and it's called This Forgotten Day, and they do some kind of historic aspect throughout the city, but it's not real estate related. That's their way to try to work with them digitally to get some exposure. We have the corner, and we have that exclusive real estate content piece with the Chronicle. And like I said, they have by far the biggest distribution of everyone in Houston. And so that exclusivity with the Chronicle for digital content, as you guys know, as we go more and more digital, more and more online, that is going to become more and more valuable. So I had to give a little bit of bad news today, mostly good news. Everything else is the exact same. And like I said, we're going to continue to offer the culture map, which is young, exciting. It's very hip. That is all the direction where we're going to try to take this company. Okay. All right. Thanks.
Dinesh, where's
Where is
Dinesh?
he? Oh, there he is.
Dinesh,
Come on up.
you missed me talking about you.
Oh.
Were your ears burning?
No, Robert told me I had to come up here. He's like,
I just wanted you to stand up here next to me because I was telling them how much fun you were and how nice you were, and they needed to stop by and say hello.
Sounds good.
This is Dinesh Don.
Hello. Already.
Uh-huh.
Not yet.
Well, that's because you're turning everything perfectly. Very
There you
good.
go.
There you go. So Dinesh is down in MLS, and I bet Robert always tells me he likes hamburgers, if anybody wants to bring him a hamburger. You like hamburgers?
I don't mind hamburgers at all.
See, there you go. Now when you go to MLS, buy 2 hamburgers, not 1. Good. We're so glad you're here.
Thank you, man. Happy to be here.
Yeah, thank you, Dinesh.
Thank you.
Oh, where's Joey? Stand up. This is Joey Downey that I was bowling with in Cyprus. And we're glad you're here. I already introduced you, and I told you you were helping your wife out. And she was gonna boss you around.
Oh, that's normal.
Good, we're so glad you're here.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks for driving in. Okay, now, are we ready? There you go. Okay, here we go. You want me to turn the lights off?
Oh, here comes CDEC. I know, well, I don't know. Let's see if we get the screen on how it
It's
looks.
already good.
Are we good? Can y'all see that?
No.
No, okay. Good morning, everyone. Thank y'all for getting here. I know with the fog, you probably had to do some extra navigation there, but I appreciate y'all coming in, so. No. All right, so my presentation today, 7 risk-defying habits for real estate agents. So this is taking in some of the most commonly asked questions that we get as a management team and concerns of agents, areas where agents just aren't sure exactly which path to take and where they get a lot of conflicting advice. So we are going to hit those head on. And certainly we welcome any questions as we're going through. I think it's so important to try to establish good habits in your profession because, let's all be honest. There are so many sloppy transactions that close, all right? And no one ever hears anything about them. They close, everyone just goes on their lives. But if your number comes up and there's a problem with that house, and all of a sudden your transaction and your paperwork is all under a microscope with, 7 attorneys sitting around a table asking you questions about your documents, you want to be sure that everything is in good form, that you did everything correctly. And the only way you can be sure of that is if you establish these good habits on every transaction. Work on them and make them part of what you do, and it'll go a long way to helping you sleep at night. So, all right, so let's look at the number one risk defined habit of a real estate agent, which is clicker go.
Yeah,
I'll
yeah.
be your clicker.
Okay. Don't play hide the ball with the inspection reports.
No kidding.
Transparency with respect to the condition of the property is just vital in our business. All right, we get in trouble when we are trying to hide things about the property. The seller gets in trouble when they are trying to hide things about the property. So as far as the condition of that property, we want to be very transparent. And that's good for the seller, it's good for the buyer, and it's good for us. And so these inspection reports, they contain a lot of information prepared by someone who is licensed by the state to perform property inspections. And so that's information that should be passed along. Sometimes agents will call and say, well, the buyer gave me the report and doesn't want me to send it to the listing agent because they say it's their confidential information and they own it. Or maybe the report has gone to the listing agent and to the seller, and the seller is saying, I don't want you to give that report to another buyer who comes along, another prospective buyer, should this deal fall out, because it's confidential information. For information to be confidential, the law requires that before I send you the information, you and I enter into a confidentiality agreement, a contract in writing, stating, I'm about to give you confidential information, specifically an inspection report. You agree that you will not disclose it. It's confidential information. We never had that with respect to providing inspection reports. Those inspection reports, once they are sent, they are no longer confidential. They're not confidential. They're not protected. Moreover, if someone tried to get us to sign a confidentiality agreement regarding an inspection report, we would say no way, okay? Because this is about the condition of the property. This is not someone's financial information, their medical information. It is not confidential. It is about the condition of the property. Yes.
If we have a listing and they bought it 2 years ago and they received the inspection report from the seller that they purchased it from, when we list the property now, it's been less than 4 years, they're going to disclose their inspection report when they purchased it. Do we disclose the inspection report that the seller gave them when they bought the house?
So I think that the way that the notice reads is that, have you, seller, received any inspection reports in the past 4 years? So the answer would be yes. Yes, so I would definitely disclose those.
It's not the date of the inspection, so if that inspection was done 6 years ago?
Well, and maybe I misunderstood. If the inspection was done within the past 4 years, the TAR form of the seller's disclosure notice says that it should be disclosed. If the inspection report is older than that, the TAR report does not require disclosure, but if I were the agent and I had that old report in my file, I might just go ahead and send it along, because I certainly don't want to potentially have a report in my file that has a defect. For example, this property had prior termite infestation, prior damage, prior termite repairs, but maybe my current seller didn't remember.
So we should.
So I would probably err on the side of providing it. However, since the TAR report does not specifically require it, we would have to take it on a case-by-case basis. Yeah. Yes.
So in that situation, do you recommend posting that inspection report on the listing along with the seller's disclosure?
No, we don't usually post the inspection report on the MLS, but so the disclosure notice is a bit misleading because it does say in that section, it says that if you have reports that you should attach them.
Right.
And we typically don't attach them. So, we just need to, we need to have them available. So if you have a buyer who is interested, then you would provide those reports to that buyer.
Thank you.
Okay. Ownership. So every now and then we'll have a buyer who will say, I own these reports, don't send them to the listing agent. Now, and if you're the buyer's agent, your response, first of all, should be, if we're going to request repairs and we're going to send an amendment, then we need to send the report because that's our proof. That's our backup, that we're not just pulling these repair requests out of the air, that the inspector really did find something. And, so we need to provide these as backup. If I'm the listing agent, I want to ask that buyer's agent, please send me the reports. I don't need to go and get my seller's permission. I don't need to call my seller and say, hey, seller, should we ask for those reports? What do you think? Do we want the buyer's reports? You don't need to have that conversation, okay? Because again, it's not confidential information and we're going for transparency. Just call the listing agent and say, send me the reports. Send them to your seller. This is what we have to deal with. Now, if there are some instances where a buyer will say, I bought those reports, agent, don't send those to anyone. If they want them, they can pay for them. And in that case, my best advice is go to if that buyer falls out, the seller should go to the seller's disclosure notice. And then the section that asks about reports, just write, Fox inspections, did an inspection on such and such date. We requested the report from the buyer's agent and they refused to provide it. Okay, so you have stated, yes, there was an inspection, because what does that do? If I'm a good buyer's agent and my buyer's wanting to make an offer on a property, I'm going to look at the archive report. I'm going to see that property went under contract previously and fell out and then went back to active. So what's my first question going to be?
Why did it fall out?
Yeah. Where are the inspection reports? Right. And the seller says, oh, we don't have the inspection reports. What do you mean you don't have the inspection reports? Well, if you got an explanation, we asked for them and the buyer's agent wouldn't give them to us. That actually makes sense, okay? Because that does happen sometimes. But if I am that next buyer's agent, I'm probably going to call the buyer's agent for the buyer who terminated it and say, will you send me the reports? And, y'all, this has happened so many times that phone call has been made and that prior buyer's agent has said, well, I told the listing agent I'd send him, but the listing agent said, please don't send me the reports. I don't want the reports. Or even worse, if you send them to me, I'm just going to delete them from my inbox, which they actually do and say, oh, I know, it's just the worst. So, don't be stuck in that position because that's really bad for the marketing of the property that you're trying to sell. And, and that's actually another really big point to bring up to your seller if they don't want to disclose reports, is that this will hurt the marketing of your home because the buyer's agents are going to look at the report. They're going to see that a contract fell out. They're going to wonder where the reports are if you don't have them. They're going to assume there's something bad on there that you don't want to disclose. And I know a lot of agents who have come to me and said, we are not going to make an offer on that property. We're no longer interested in it because they aren't providing the reports. It's
generally
true.
raises a red flag.
It's true. It raises a red flag.
Right.
It hurts the marketing. So it's always best to address these problems head on. And some sellers will say, well, that inspector was just flat out wrong on that report. They didn't look at this, they didn't look at that. They said that this was wrong with my property. My property doesn't even have one of those. There are all sorts of things that they can say. And what I always advise is, okay, seller, we want you to be heard. We have to pass this report on, but I want you to be heard. Just write a one-page letter, intro, and we'll stick that on top of the inspection report when we provide it to the buyers. And you can just very briefly, don't write a treatise, but just very briefly, state the points why you think this inspection is wrong or the issues that you have with it. Yes.
So, about timing. When do you do that? Because we're not getting a lot of showings anymore. Everyone's clicking on the internet and they're not even coming to see the house and fall in love with it. So if there is a false scarlet letter about the property, for example, they thought that there were termites or something like that, and it turns out there were never termites, it just happened to be dust, hypothetical. If you disclose that prior to, and you never received the reports, if you disclose that prior to the client actually coming to the house, they're probably not going to come to the house.
Okay, so you're saying if you're the listing, and I'm repeating it for the benefit of, we have several people watching. So what you're saying is that if you are the listing agent and you have information that an inspection report is incorrect, but you've provided the inspection report to a next prospective buyer.
Listing agent never got the inspection report.
The listing agent never got the report.
Was told that by the buyer's agent that the home that the inspector thought there may have been prior termite damage.
But no, okay, so the inspector gave the listing agent information, or the buyer's agent gave the listing agent information about an alleged defect on the home, but it was not substantiated by the inspection report.
First buyer terminates. Listing agent never receives the report. Another party comes after the fact and wants to see the house. If I post this one-page letter defending why it came out about, more than likely my client, just based upon the presumption of there may be a termite issue, isn't going to come see the house, as compared to having that one-page letter present at the showing and just letting them know, oh, by the way, we did have
Get a termite.
No, I would not post it in that case, but I think, so I'm getting in the weeds a little bit here, because if the buyer's agent never sent the listing agent the report, then anything that buyer's agent is really telling me, I feel it's a bit speculative because it's not backed up by proof. So I'm going to be real careful with deciding whether I share that information. What I might do if it's something really big, like this house has termites, and I'm not sending you the termite report, but I'm telling you this house might have termites, then I would probably hire another termite inspector to come out and check it out so that I have something. Yes. But if it's something that is more nebulous, then we have to be very careful with these disclosures, because we can get over into the realm of speculation. It probably has this, or some people say it has this, rumor, things of that nature, and we don't disclose rumor or speculation. We disclose known defects. So if I had never received the inspection report, then I wouldn't have my seller prepare anything refuting the inspection report or raising points about the inspection report. I wouldn't ever have that produced. Okay, any more questions before we move on? Oh, when to walk away. If your client, if everyone knows about a defect on the home, it's in the inspection report, the seller knows that you've seen it, and the seller says, I don't want you to disclose those reports, and we're not going to disclose the defect. Well, first of all, we need to have a conversation with management. You need to come in. We'll do everything that we can to help you keep that listing, and to convince the seller that the right thing to do is to disclose the report. But when push comes to shove, if they're not going to do it, then that's when we walk away, because your reputation is on the line, the company's reputation is on the line. You don't want to lie awake at night worrying about lawsuits. And, we just, yeah. And sometimes when we tell the seller, if you're not going to disclose that, then we're walking away and we don't want the listing, that'll really get their attention. And they'll say, oh, well, hang on, wait a minute. You mean you're not going to stand behind me in this thing? No, we're not. Okay, well then, let's revisit. All right, clicker. Okay. Clicker. All right, so make sure that the seller's disclosure notice is complete. This seller's disclosure notice, I really like to think of it as the closest thing that we have to a free insurance policy for the seller and for the listing agent, because this is their opportunity to write down everything that they know that's wrong with the property, and their opportunity to say, I'm not aware that the house has any of these other defects. So later, if an issue comes up and the buyer says, well, seller, you knew about this, the seller can say, well, I checked on this notice that I was not aware, and I truly am not aware. I was not aware. I didn't know about that defect. So, our sales in Texas are as is, meaning the home is sold in its present condition, not in perfect condition, not in good condition, not in new condition, not in poor condition. It's sold the way it is, present condition, including all known defects and including all unknown defects. So if I'm a buyer, I buy a house, I go in there to remodel the bathroom, I take down the big mirror that covers the whole wall, and there's mold behind it. The seller didn't know, no one knew, the inspector didn't find it. That is an unknown defect. And I bought that home in its present condition with all defects, both known and unknown. All right, so let's see what else. And so this morning when I was driving in, I was listening to an HAR podcast and a video, HAR video. So if y'all are on Facebook, anyone here on Facebook? Okay. So go to HAR's Facebook page. They have, I believe it was 96 videos posted there, and they're great videos. They do this Monday morning video thing, and they're all posted there. And so I was listening to one that Grant Harpole was there, who's an attorney that I used to work with, who represents HAR, and he was talking about the difference between being aware of something versus having personal knowledge. So with regard to the seller's disclosure notice, the seller's disclosure notice asks the seller, are you aware? Which is much broader and more expansive than simply, do you have personal knowledge, right? So sometimes a seller will say, well, according to the old seller's disclosure notice, there were some piers put in, but I don't have any records about the piers being put in. I don't have personal knowledge. Well, that's not what it's asking. It's asking, are you aware? Which is a little bit broader.
But isn't that what David's talking about? Or Tim was talking about?
No, because it doesn't get us into speculation and rumor.
Well,
We're
this
still
was to me, so I'm telling it
there.
to you.
It was on,
Yeah.
this was on my seller's disclosure notice.
Right.
Yeah, so are you aware?
Right.
Yes, you can't just say, well, it didn't happen, I didn't
Right.
order it, I wasn't there, therefore I'm not aware of it. That's not the case. You just don't have personal knowledge. So,
The one thing that always comes up, and I know the answer, I'm just reiterating it, when there's a roof leak, but then you put on a new roof, that goes away.
yes,
You don't have to-
absolutely.
you don't have to- If it's fixed, right?
Right.
No,
So,
but they ask
yes.
all the time.
Well, so a repair fixes a defect. So after the repair, the defect should no longer exist.
So do you have to even say that it once happened,
Well, I'm glad you asked that, because we're gonna talk about that, and you said roof leak, which means water issues, and we're extra sensitive about water issues, so we're gonna talk about that a little bit later. But let's just say that you were talking about, let's see, what would be another defect?
well, like someone said, the bath, this is a good one. Like a lot of times, the sink overflows because the air conditioning drain clogged.
Okay, well, that's another water issue, so we're not gonna
That's
do that
not a
one.
broken window. But it was fixed.
Okay, a broken window, no water intrusion. How about that one?
Oh,
Once
okay.
it's fixed, it doesn't have to be disclosed that the window is defective, okay? So, Also, the seller's disclosure notice, it is meant to be a current snapshot of the property, what the property looks like now. And so in general, it's not going to take in everything that has ever occurred to the property, every defect that the property has ever had in the past. It's just looking at what is defective now. There are a few exceptions, and those are noted in the seller's disclosure notice. Let's see, that is on page, it's in section 3. So there are a few sections here where they specifically ask about previous items. So previous flooding into the structures, previous flooding onto the property, previous foundation repairs, previous roof repairs, previous other structural repairs, previous wood strain insect, and somewhere on here is previous use.
There's a dishwasher leak.
Previous fires, yes, exactly. So, so other than those specific instances where the disclosure notice asks specifically for previous things, we are really looking at a current snapshot of the property and not at everything that has ever gone wrong in the property, because on a house that was built a while back, that would probably be a pretty long list. So when you're reviewing a report as the listing agent, just take a quick look at it and make sure that anywhere that they've checked yes, that they have given an explanation. Make sure that it is complete. Some of y'all may be aware, I actually practiced law for 5 years when I first got out of law school before I got into the brokerage business. And we represented brokers all over the state of Texas. And I can tell you that every single question on this notice has been the subject of a lawsuit. Okay, every single thing, even
The map.
oh yes, the meth.
It's on page 3, isn't it?
Yes, let's talk about meth.
That's previous.
Let's talk about meth. So why do they bring up meth and not, I don't know,
Doesn't meth
heroin,
stay in the
cocaine?
wall?
It does stay in the wall.
Stays in the sheet wall.
So meth actually, first of all, the ingredients that they use to make that are not regulated by the government, right, obviously.
Yeah.
And so they're very dangerous ingredients, and they can seep into the walls, the flooring, the countertops. They can get into the grass outside. I mean, they're very, very dangerous for young children. And I once encountered a meth home. We got an inspector's report that said that this home had probably been used for the production of methamphetamines. And the way they could tell was because all the ducts were sealed off, air ducts and windows were sealed. And there was a young, in his 20s minister who moved into town who was about to buy this house. And I sent him everything I could find about the dangers of methamphetamine production, and he backed out, and we terminated the listing. So, we don't want to, there are a lot of lawsuits we can deal with, but if someone is dying of cancer because they bought this house and we didn't disclose the meth, then that's a problem. And if y'all are wondering why I know so much about meth, everything I know about methamphetamine production, I learned on Breaking Bad. So.
But actually, I think it was Leanne. Do you remember this? Leanne, I think, sold years ago, and Beth didn't know it at the time. And they saw like mold, like black start coming out of the sheetrock.
Yeah.
It was the meth?
There's a lot of bad stuff
Yes.
there. I think Leanne's watching,
That
so.
could have been a grow up. That could have been like
Okay.
marijuana.
Let's
You
see.
gotta disclose that though.
So, yes, it should be disclosed for
Of
sure.
course,
And
but-
I mean, really, we don't want to list that home. Let's just put it that way. Explanation, when a seller checks yes, that there is a known defect, and then they explain, I always say, look, the explanations, they need to be brief and factual. Okay, we do not need to go into all of the scientific literature and, write a 10-page summary and talk about, people get off into the weeds with this sometimes, but just make it brief and factual as far as the explanation. Yes.
So just I know you are gonna talk about water penetration.
I'm gonna talk about water like crazy.
Okay, all right.
Okay.
Until then.
Dishwasher.
Okay, so there's a new form that y'all should have in your materials, this update to seller's disclosure notice, which is a good one because, you know, in the past, we've always kind of scribbled, when we find out about new defects, we've kind of scribbled them on the notice. And that's still okay, by the way. I'm not saying that your seller shouldn't do that. But there is now this new notice that's provided if they want to, you know, keep it clean and add more information than some little, you know, changes on the notice would allow. They can use this update. And sometimes people ask, well, you know, we're providing the report, but does the seller have to go through the inspection report and write down everything that the inspector noted and change their seller's disclosure notice? You know, I'm kind of iffy on that. I really feel that if you're providing the report and you're providing the notice, the buyer's getting all the information. They are receiving the information. So no one ever got sued because the buyer said, well, you told me about the foundation problems on the inspection report, but you didn't update your seller's disclosure notice. That is not going to fly as a lawsuit. Yes?
What about, like, the house is under contract, the seller receives the inspection report, so now it becomes part of their seller's disclosure. But then the next question from the other agent is, what did the seller do, you know, pursuant to this report? Were any of those defects or deficiencies as they're noted repaired? I kind of feel like it's, here's the inspection report, this is what we did about it.
Right. So as far as what the seller did to repair defects.
So that's part of the seller's disclosure.
You could put that on the seller's disclosure notice. It's not required by Texas state law, like the notice is, the defects have to be disclosed according to law, so that wouldn't be something that would be required. But no one ever got in trouble for putting something on the notice that went over and above. So they could put it there, they could put it on a one sheet, you know, letter notice, here's what we've done.
Yeah.
And certainly if something was noted as being a defect and they have now repaired it, then I think they should change the seller's disclosure notice and say, this item is no longer a defect, it has been repaired, right? So definitely that would be something that would be very advantageous. Defects known to the agent. So what if you know, so you go to a listing appointment, you get the seller's disclosure completed, and you're looking at it and the seller says no previous flooding. And you think, well, you know, gosh, during the Memorial Day floods, I remember seeing their carpet in the front lawn. And, you know, they did have that big ARS truck out there for 5 days. And, you know, somehow this is not really making sense. Okay, so you have knowledge that there's something on here that the seller may have missed. So you gotta call the seller and say, seller, I just, you know, I think you may have missed this on the notice. And remember when your carpets were in the front lawn? Well, maybe, you know, we need to put this on here so we can have a nice conversation with them about that we need to, you know, update the notice. And, you know, because you can have knowledge about the property, about defects in the property, even maybe some that the seller doesn't know, and you need to get those out somehow, okay? Because you don't want to be the agent who has knowledge of material defects about a property that are not disclosed to the buyer. So you've got to get those out. The easiest way for you to get those out is via the seller's disclosure notice. So I would just ask the seller to please add those, have a conversation, talk to management, we'll help you out with it. Yes? Do you have a question?
They do not.
Say they do not what?
Want to cooperate.
Want to cooperate.
Maybe that's a lot.
Well, then that.
What they say is, my house didn't flood, I only got about 1.5 inches. It was not
Well,
even
that
up to the
first
top
inch
of
is
the
the worst
baseboard.
Well,
Yeah.
You
That's what I'm
know,
saying.
so they consider flooding a foot or more, you know.
So if the seller does not want to disclose a defect, then again, we will be happy to talk to them and explain to them all the reasons that it should be disclosed. And then push comes to shove, we will walk away because, you know, this company's reputation has been built for many, many, many years by agents who have held to those standards that they want to disclose everything. And we're not going to throw it all away for any particular seller. So All right, let's see, what do I have next? Oh, here we go. Click.
Click.
Water, here we go. So water foundation and structural issues. So people are hyper sensitive to these things. And so the classic example, and this was an actual case, the names will be changed to protect the innocent, but so an agent had a listing, and during the term of the listing, there was a major water event, a toilet overflow in the upstairs that came down to the dining room, through the dining room ceiling. The seller repaired it, had it all opened up, had the people come to suck out the moisture, had the fans in, had everything repaired, fixed, everything fixed. And so is that home defective now that everything's been fixed? No. So nothing goes on the seller's disclosure notice. Well, it didn't in this case. Nothing, they didn't make any changes to the notice. So the buyer comes in, sees the property, loves the property, buys the property, moves in. First day they move in, the neighbor leans over the fence and says, "Oh, I can't believe that they had that huge water leak. And wow, it was coming through the dining room ceiling, and it was huge. It was like you could take go for a swim in that dining room." And, the neighbor is always the first one who's going to tell them all about it. They do it every single time.
We say, if you're not gonna tell them, your neighbor will.
Exactly. If you're not going to tell them, your neighbor will. Good advice. They will always tell. So this is another example where it's something that is not technically required by state law to be disclosed on the seller's disclosure notice, but you're not going to get in trouble for going overboard and for putting too much on there. I would put it on there. I would always advise the seller. We did have a toilet overflow that leaked through the dining room ceiling, and it was repaired, and here's when it happened, and provide all the receipts for the repairs. I would put that on the seller's disclosure notice. I would provide the receipts using the notice of information from other sources to make sure that the buyer actually received them. And that's how I'd handle that. So a water issue that happens, and there is a time factor here. It's going to say just before or during the listing. So, some of these things, if this toilet overflow had happened 3 years ago, it's probably not, you probably don't need to put it on the notice, okay? Because it's just not, it's not something that's fresh in everyone's memory. And it's the problem occurred, but everything's been okay. The condition of the property has held for 3 years. I think we're okay at that point. But if it happens during the term of your listing or immediately before, then I think it's probably important. I don't care. It doesn't matter. You're not going to get sued because you put it in the wrong spot. Find some blank spaces, some blank lines, and put it on there.
Well, the part that says if it hadn't already been disclosed somewhere else, put it here.
Right, there's a section at the end that says, are there any, well, it does say, are there any defects that haven't previously been disclosed? So we're not saying this is a defect. So it's not a defect, but hey, we're making you aware.
Same thing like dishwasher overflows, ice
Yeah.
makers overflow. Those
Anything
things
with
happen all the
water,
time.
anything structural, any settling. My favorite one on settling is people will check yes, and then on the explanation, they'll say it's just normal settling for the neighborhood. Well, that just tells me the whole neighborhood is messed up, right? Where are the cracks? Where are the cracks? That's what we want to know. Where's the settling? Okay, so let's go on to our notice of information from other sources, which is a form that y'all should have in your little packet here. So this is second or third favorite form. Yes.
Was that it on water?
Pardon?
Did you have any more that you were going to talk about on water?
No, do you have anything you'd like to talk about on water?
Mold.
Mold, okay.
So mold's a big deal, and nowhere does it say anything
Oh, yeah.
That's a very good one.
about mold.
It sure
Previous
does.
mold treatments, or it just says, are there any conditions that are in section 4 that are not healthy? But it does not specifically say anything about prior mold tests.
Where is it?
Any condition on the property necessarily affects the health or safety of an individual.
Well, no, in section 5, any repairs or treatments other than routine maintenance made to the property to remediate environmental hazards such as asbestos, radon, lead-based paint, urea, formaldehyde, or mold.
Okay.
So if there's mold remediation, if there's been any sort of mold, I would put that there. If there have been repairs or treatments. If there is current mold, it doesn't say anywhere that there's current mold. Section 4, are you aware of anything that has not been previously disclosed? Okay, in there. Yes.
So these people who remediated after Harvey, right, and they tested for mold before they sheetrocked it up and did everything like that, do they need to be sure and go through and say that, or can you just say flooded during Harvey, remediated and remodeled or something like that?
Well, I would provide all of those, all of the mold, the protocol, the inspection report, the protocol, the certificate.
Okay.
I would provide, definitely, that's so important. And please tell your sellers to hold on to all that information, because, I mean, going forward, people are going to want to see that, I would think, for the next 10, 20 years. Yes.
That's absolutely right. So I've sold a lot of investor homes, and they have every single transaction, every last one. The buyer always requests the certificate.
Mm-hmm. Yes. So he was just saying he's sold a lot of homes that have had flooding issues, and that the mold certificate, they always ask for that, whether it's a mold clearance saying we've checked this home and there's no evidence of mold, or that there was a remediation done and it's now passed. Yes.
Okay, so underwater penetration, I'm just listing a property and they have marked, no. But during Harvey, they had some windows that leaked and they have been completely repaired, but they, on an exhibit A, discussed the windows, the water penetration and repairs. That's enough?
Okay, that's a great question. So she just brought up water penetration. So on the inspection report, her sellers checked the box, no water penetration, but then they provided additional documentation that talked about the fact that water had come in through the windows during Harvey. And they talked about what they had done to repair and remediate. There's actually a case law on that particular question. So water penetration refers to current. Is there current water penetration? Is there currently a window where when it rains, the water's going to come in the window? If so, check yes. If not, check no. But that prior water penetration, I would say goes under this slide, that is a prior water event and people are hypersensitive, and make sure you disclose it somewhere that yes, we did have water come into the house during Harvey and here's what we did to fix it. So what your sellers did, I think, was absolutely correct. Yes. One thing to remember about the seller's disclosure notice also, y'all, is that it is required by the state of Texas that the seller complete this notice. So while we can give lots of advice about how you should complete it, and our advice is usually disclose everything, it's really this, we are not like an intermediary between the state and the seller as far as completion of this notice. So they're not listening to our advice, they need to talk to their attorney about it, because it is their obligation to disclose. And yes, we'll go ahead, Tom. Yeah.
I was just going to say, so many of the seller's disclosures are now filled out on, electronic presentation and receipt. They don't get, these face-to-face, instructions always from the listing agent and so on. And so they send it back to you, all DocuSigned or whatever, and then there you have it. You don't know. Sometimes the seller is in another state or somewhere. So, sometimes if you think that's going to put us in jeopardy,
Well, I think we have to rely on the seller that they are going to complete the disclosure notice honestly. And if it's not complete, if we get it back and it's not complete, then we should point that out to them. That's why I'm saying make sure you do a little review and make sure that they filled everything out. because every single item on this has been or will be the subject of a lawsuit. So make sure it is complete. And if we need to talk to them about sensitive issues, then we'll call them and talk to them. Yes.
Blame management. Just tell them it will not go in MLS until it's complete. They get
Yes.
rejected and it comes back to me. And so
Yes.
that's it.
If you're playing good cop, bad cop, management is happy to be
Yeah,
bad cop
right.
every
Blame
time.
'em.
Yes.
So like, as far as the house that flooded during Harvey, I have a friend of mine that I helped basically gut his house and then reinstall the drywall and everything and did the mold remediation ourselves, like the mold prevention. Like went and bought the stuff at the hardware store, sprayed it. So as far as that goes, like I know that we did the work for mold remediation, but you still have to have it inspected, correct?
Yes.
If we,
You have to have a mold inspector come in and, well, right. So now that you're here, please don't engage in any mold remediation unless you become a certified mold remediator. So,
But even if he did, if it gets inspected and it passes inspection, it passed.
yes, if it gets inspected, you need a mold inspector to come out and say that this is past inspection. And I don't know what they're gonna require you to do, since it sounds like the mold remediation was maybe done in a rather unorthodox fashion. But you need to just ask them. So there are a lot of rules concerning mold, and if I'm a property owner, I can remediate my own house the way I want to. But if I'm doing it for someone else or helping someone else do it, then there are very strict guidelines that I would have to follow.
See, just one last
Yes.
comment. I've been working with a lot of buyers, and a lot of times they want to see the pictures when the house was flooded.
Mhm.
And it does honestly work to one's advantage to show those pictures, because in their mind, when you say flood, they're thinking water up to here when it's really this much.
Mhm.
And again, just to make the point that if there are pictures, it really helps support the
Yeah, so
documents.
Michelle was just saying specifically with regard to flooding, sometimes it can be very helpful to have photographs and to show those to the buyer, to show them the extent of the flooding, which takes us to our next slide. The notice of information from other sources would be a great form to use to provide those photographs and to let the buyer sign this and thereby verify to you that they did actually receive them, and then you've got that information. So, and when I call it a hot potato, the sort of the classic case for the hot potato, I don't know if any of you who have maybe been in the business for a while remember the Cooper Cameron site that was located across I-10 from the close-in Memorial area, possibly the most expensive neighborhood in Houston. Anyway, that was a plant, and they had some chemicals that seeped into the water and went into the underground water and under close-in Memorial. So the homeowners in that area started receiving letters from the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality saying, we're going to be drilling in your area. We're drilling down to check the groundwater for contamination. Cooper Cameron had this big website talking about the water contamination. There were tons of lawsuits. I think every brokerage in town got sued because people bought homes without knowing about this groundwater contamination. And even though most of the homes in close-in Memorial are not serviced by water wells, they did complain that perhaps their children would be harmed by playing in the grass that was affected by this contaminated water. So there were lots of lawsuits that were settled as a result of that. Anyway, this is a great form to use if you have a letter like that from the Texas Environmental Quality Commission or anything else that you get. All right, next one, just to go, I think we're about to run out of time. Okay, so avoid inadvertently creating a contract with your text negotiations. And we talked about this so many times, but you know, a lot of party buyers and sellers are still under the impression that, hey, we don't have a contract unless I have signed the full written contract. And the case law just does not support that. A text message is a writing, an email is a writing. And if you have certain key ingredients in that text message, such as the property address, a price, and a closing date, then you can have a contract and an agreement, a meeting of the minds. Then you are creating a contract. So let's look, Marilyn, if we can, at our example. Okay, now this is a case, and this is especially sensitive if a written offer has already been sent. So if the buyer has sent a written offer that contains all those terms, and then we have text messages, additional writings that are making changes or suggesting revisions to that offer, then this becomes even more serious. So great news, Tom said the offer looks good. He just needs 10 more days added to the closing date. Can you ask your buyers if that's okay? So can you go to your client and get approval? And then the next response is, I just spoke with them and they said no problem to extend the closing date. So I'm acting with the authority given by my client, the buyer, and saying, I spoke with them and they said it's fine. Okay, what do we have next? Tom will sign it as soon as he's out of surgery. I'll get it to you tonight or ASAP tomorrow. Well, what happens? While Tom is finishing up the surgery, another offer comes in and it's for more money. Guess what Tom's gonna say? I didn't sign a contract. I didn't agree to that. So your client will drop you in the grease on this. So you have to be very, very careful with your words and try to avoid saying things that are going to create a contract, and just use terms like, well, let me talk to my client, we'll get back with you, or we'll take it under consideration, thank you so much. And then make sure, get your client to actually sign the documents, okay? It's really important for your own protection. Okay, so next we have, right, okay, I think I covered some of this. So, and using, you know, the seller's invitation to resubmit, which is a document here in your forms. The main reason that we use this to avoid entering into a contract inadvertently. So please make sure you use it.
Sita?
Yes.
So if you receive a offer, not on paper, but in an email on my listing, and is that, and I've, you know, talked to my clients who responded, but they didn't agree to the price. So, and what would be the best way for me to say they did agree to the price? Email them back and say, please put your, you know, your offer on. Or I can't really use the resubmit for something that's only in an email. It's not.
So your question is, you received an offer, but it's not on the proper forms.
Yes.
It's just an email offer. Yeah. Right. So, you know,
that can't be considered.
A contract could be potentially created that way, but the issue with that is that there are lots of legal requirements, lots of notices that have to be made that are covered by our contracts, right? So, so while the parties can create a contract that way, we're not, by allowing something like that to happen, we would be violating TREC. We're members of TAR, so we're supposed to use their forms. So we should respond and ask them to submit on the proper forms, yes.
Right.
However, I'm not saying that a buyer and a seller can't create a contract that way, because they can create they are not required to use the TREC forms or the TAR forms. But when we're involved in the deal, we need to use them for our protection and for our client's protection.
In this case, it was just the thing that if the client is interested in these terms, then we'll put it on paper in a contract.
Just being lazy.
Yeah.
Well, he didn't want to, he was being lazy, but yeah.
Yes.
Kind of knew it was.
Does management have a handout you can give seller representing or even a buyer? Says, you know, the text messages can get you in the stage.
I don't know that we haven't created a handout, but I think there are lots of articles that, that've been in Texas Realtor Magazine. And there's certainly, the video from on the HR website that I was reviewing this morning, talks about that. So there are lots of sources for that we could definitely provide. All right, so my next habit is to make use of this new withdrawal of offer form. It's really a great form, and a lot of people see this and they think, well, this is for the buyer. If the buyer submitted an offer and now they want to buy and now they found a new house and they want to withdraw their written offer. Well, sure, it can be used for that, but it can also be used for the seller if the seller has. If you're concerned about what we just talked about, text message negotiations, maybe a buyer submitted an offer and your client has sent an offer to resubmit and the buyer said, okay, well, what about this price? And maybe there have been some texts going back and forth. Maybe you're worried that you have potentially bound your seller. You can use this form, the notice of withdrawal of offer, to wipe all of that out before your seller goes and accepts the new offer that's come in. So keep that in mind. And this is just a good one for tying up any loose ends when your client has decided, I'm done with this negotiation process. I'm ready to move on, either to a new buyer, to a different house. Can wipe up everything up so that you can move on. Yes?
Both parties need to sign?
Well, no, both parties don't need to sign. It's either done by the buyer or by the seller. And so the buyer or the seller would need to sign saying, this is my written notice of withdrawal of everything. Now, if a contract has already been created, then a withdrawal of an offer is not necessarily going to help you. But you can use it and it may help. All right, let's see. Number 7. This is a great habit to get into, and I know a lot of y'all do this. Your requests with money whenever possible. So, just try to bundle them up and do a credit to closing costs or do a price reduction. And I always like, if repairs have to be completed prior to closing, it's always best if the buyer can get a bid from whoever they want the seller to use, and do an amendment and say the seller will pay XYZ contracting company to perform the repair shown on the bid attached as Exhibit A. Okay, instead of saying the buyer will make the roof repair. Well, the seller will make the roof repair prior to closing. Have the buyer choose the contractor, have the work detailed, and do it that way. Also, one of my pet peeves, and I know a lot of agents here, it's probably your pet peeve also, but we don't like to refer to a third document, such as the inspection report, in our amendment. So when we do an amendment and say the seller will repair everything noted on the inspection report, it raises so many problems. It does.
It's lazy.
It raises so many problems because these inspection reports, a lot of times they'll say things like, it's nearing the end of its useful life. Well, in the buyer's mind, that means replace it. Right. In the seller's mind, that means, hey, it's working.
That's exactly right.
Or it can say, well, the air conditioner is, kind of barely hanging on. You might be able to repair it this way, but you probably need to replace it at some point in the future. Well, to the seller, that means repair it. To the buyer, that means replace it. So, it's a lot easier to try to boil all of this down to money requests and, and be very specific. And certainly, if you're getting down to the wire and we don't have resolution on repairs, then try to extend the option period to give yourself enough time and potentially to get a bid for repairs. Yes?
You're not suggesting stucco repairs. Just take some money up front. Those need to be done.
Those, I think often the lender will require those to be done in advance. All right, thank you all so much. Yes, one more.
What do we do if a seller or broker tries to use the track seller's disclosure notice instead of the tar?
Well, I'm so glad you asked because that question comes up The seller will say, I don't want to use this TAR form, I found this TREC form. Well, so so the TREC form is the bare bones of the statute. The property code says the seller must provide this information. That is just the bare bones. The TAR form takes the TREC form plus adds a lot of stuff that over the years, TAR has learned through watching litigation and watching these issues that constantly come up that are liability issues for sellers and brokers, that this is important stuff to have on here, like providing the inspection reports. That's on the TAR form, not the TREC form. At our company, we use the TAR form exclusively. I cannot think of one time, I really can't, that we have used the TREC form. I can think of a lot of times that sellers have asked to use it. But if we use the TAR form exclusively, and then all of a sudden on this one property, we use the TREC form, that looks really bad for us, and it's a red flag. It's gonna hurt the marketing, and we are for transparency with respect to the condition of the property. I would ask the seller, what is on the TAR form that you're concerned about specifically?
What if we have a buyer and it's the broker, the other broker is a shady attorney and he says, no, I want to use the.
Oh my gosh, it sure is red flag.
If you have a buyer and the listing and the seller is represented by a shady attorney that who says, we're just using the TREC form, and attorneys do this all the time, and we're just doing what the statute requires. We don't care about what TAR says. Well, in that case, I would send the seller the TAR form, and I would say, please have your client complete this. And when they say no, then I would send that to my buyer and say, okay, here's what they provided to us, the TREC form. Here's what I've asked them to complete. They've said no. We can certainly move forward on this transaction if you want to, but I just want you to be able to compare these forms and see what information we're not getting, because they are satisfying the statute. All right, thank you so much. Thank y'all for coming.
Don't get up, don't stand up, don't stand up. This is our last meeting of the year.
Oh,
Can you
no.
believe it?
Oh, y'all don't wanna come
Oh,
to
you're not gonna see
Christmas
us till January 8th.
Oh,
Wow.
January 8th. Keith, are you gonna be able to make it
I don't
now?
know.
You're not gonna be on the front row till January 8th.
Emotionally difficult.
I'm telling
Might
you.
come and sit at all.
Yeah,
You're all-
y'all have a wonderful season. We will see you next year at the office meeting, but we will see you before that, just in the office. But have a wonderful, wonderful time with your families. Yay!
There's no
Y'all got it on. Thank you.
Yeah.